Hello, everybody, and welcome to day one of the Startup Entrepreneurship Camp at Drexel University's Charles D. Close School of Entrepreneurship. And this is our inaugural camp. This is our first day, so I'm very excited to be here. And Adit is our inaugural speaker, so this is a real treat. Adit Gupta is a PhD candidate at Drexel University with research in machine learning, neural networks, and human-computer interaction. Adit previously founded Vibe, a real-time Yelp-like social media platform that captured more than 3,000 users in under 1 year while he was wrapping up his undergraduate studies. Adit is now working on a new venture called Lula, a unique delivery service still in stealth mode. In his free time, he loves to play tennis and read, and of course be with his family, as he already mentioned. Adit is a great friend and colleague of mine, so without further ado, Mr. Gupta.
Thanks, Roger. It's great to be here. I'd love to answer any questions that anyone has. I think that one of the philosophies that I've always lived by through my, I guess later in high school and then undergrad, was always do a billion things. So teaching tennis to doing a side job to self-learning and reading. And so whenever I'm speaking or whenever I'm chatting with younger folks where I have the opportunity to give thoughts on things I did well and things I didn't do well, I always like to kind of reflect on things that worked out, which is one of the things is doing a whole bunch of stuff at the same time. So I'm here as a resource. I love helping, and so I guess in this session I'd be happy to go over literally anything. So Roger, I don't know if you have kind of a framework or items that you think I should chat about.
There we go. Very good question. So, yeah, if you could just share your story first and foremost, I know they'll learn a lot from that and kind of the highs and lows of your journey. And, we'll just take it from there.
Yeah. So I'm from the New Jersey area here in Voorhees. Anyone else in New Jersey? Raise your hands. No one in New Jersey? Okay. So I went to this school called Eastern High School, and it's about 30 minutes away from the Philadelphia area. And I guess growing up, I didn't really quite have a sense of college. I didn't really know I had to do well in school to go to college. I kind of was in just dreamland. I was like, I'm going to go to MIT and I'm just going to apply there and get in. But I had no idea I had to take the SATs, and I suck at tests. And so throughout high school, I just did a lot of stuff. I played tennis. My first entrepreneurial venture was actually teaching tennis, and that happened by accident. I was playing tennis, and someone next to me looked like they were struggling, and I just went up and was like, "Hey, are you guys looking for tennis lessons?" as a joke. And to my surprise, they said they were. And so that was my first tennis lesson, and in the following 4 years, I grew that to 63 people that I taught. And the revenue that I got from that business was how I paid for my first 2 years of college. And I ended up building my own app to teach tennis. And so it really goes to show you, just by chance, just doing random things that, not truly random, but doing things by chance can lead you to paths that are unknown. Then I came to Drexel specifically because my father also went to Drexel. And at the time, it was one of the best engineering schools that I'd gotten into. Coming into Drexel, I was a business and computer engineering major. And coming in, I actually did not know much coding. And all I wanted to do was just either work in finance, or I actually wasn't truly entrepreneurial. I didn't know I wanted to start businesses. And so coming in, I actually went to a hackathon. One of my friends was like, "Hey, there's a competition happening at Penn. It's the whole weekend, and you stay in the I think the basketball center, the 76ers basketball center, I'm playing the Wells Fargo Center. The whole weekend, they put bedding in the VIP rooms, and that's where you sleep. And so the point is, you spend the whole weekend there working on making a project, and one person is going to end end up winning like tens of thousands of dollars as a prize. And so I was like, okay, let's do it. So I go to this hackathon, not knowing what a hackathon is. And I get there and I see all these people trying to build projects. As an example, kind of an app that can detect skin cancer using machine learning, finance apps, games, just a whole bunch of different things. And as soon as I got there, I kind of just felt crippled because I did not know how to build anything like tech wise. So I know that what I realized was in order to build anything interesting and cool, I had to know how to code. And so literally the next week I changed my major from business and engineering to computer science and software engineering. And so that was kind of the first time I kind of took a chance and did something based on what I thought was right. So sort of fast forward 3 to 5 years, Drexel has a really good co-op system. So I got to work at a whole bunch of companies like Comcast and Microsoft. And I also got to work in the federal government, as well as some finance companies like Susquehanna International Group. And my kind of motivation throughout undergrad was to try out a whole bunch of things that I could, very diverse things, so I could get an understanding of how just different jobs work. And I still didn't really know what I wanted to do. So around junior year was when I actually met my 2 other co-founders at the time. And we came together, and they had just started Drexel as well. We came together and we realized that we wanted to start working on a problem and potentially make a company out of it, and the company's Vibe. So we go at it for about a couple months, and then we did a pretty major hard pivot from one idea to the next. And a pivot is essentially in startup, which you'll learn eventually, which is you're trying to solve one thing one way, and then you realize you have to do it a completely different way. So we pivoted, and then we worked on that venture for about 2 more years. We launched it. It's on the App Store now. It's essentially Yelp, but in real time. So that app that we made got over 3,000 downloads. And in that process, I got to learn a lot of cool things, how to raise money from venture capitalists. I got to learn what to do and what not to do in building technology, and just a whole bunch of other things. So we actually, unfortunately, kind of stepped aside from that venture because of COVID, and just because of what market that business was capturing, the hospitality industry. And as you guys know, it's struggling quite a bit because of COVID. Now I'm actually currently working on another venture while getting my PhD at Drexel, called Lula. So I guess that's a kind of a long intro, but that's kind of, it's my story.
I love it. And I have a few questions for you, so I guess we'll kind of make it more of a panel style. But yeah, how did you know, or when did you know, right? Because I know that you kind of talked about like your first entrepreneurial experience, but kind of when did you know was the right time to try it?
Yeah, I didn't. I think again that kind of goes to like going into the venture. We wanted to build something really cool, and I think when you're starting a business, there's often a lot of excitement, and there's the very first time there's a lot of I like this naive kind of ignorance where you don't really care how hard something is going to be, you just do it. And so my first time around, we didn't realize how hard something would be, but we just were very passionate to want to solve a problem. And we were just really excited about that problem, and we thought that we could have a pretty good answer or solution. And so, yeah, you won't know if it's right, but I guess my thought process has always been, don't let education stop you from learning, which is a really good quote from Mark Twain, which basically is, if you're working on school all the time and you're not working on stuff that's going to help you learn, then you're actually like enabling education to prevent learning. So I actually, working at this startup Vibe, learned enough about certain technologies that Amazon gave me a job offer. And I would have never gotten that if I didn't just spend all my extra time working on this new business.
Wow, I love it. That's really, really inspiring. Yeah. How did you start Vibe? Because, in this camp, like we're talking about like the ideation process and we've kind of distilled it to like 5 steps. So a problem, solution, everything you've already mentioned. But yeah, how did you, start beyond the planning? Because so many students have this awesome plan and they do these camps and then they just don't actually ever launch.
Yeah. Um, I think one of the mistakes we made with Vibe was we spent way too long planning and building before launching. And I'll kind of talk about why that is. But I guess to answer how we launched and how we started it, um, I think it started from just knowing the resources we had at hand and taking advantage of everything we could get for free. So, as an example, Amazon has a program where they give you almost $100,000 worth of cloud credits, which is a very easy way to describe that. It's imagine Amazon has these servers and you want to run your software on their servers and they're basically saying, hey, here's $100,000 worth of credit, go build stuff. And this was great because we didn't spend a lot, but we spent like 8 to 9,000 building and testing our software. So that's one example. Another example is the Biota incubator that's available at Drexel. It's such a fantastic opportunity to be next to entrepreneurs and see how they're solving things and how they're like what their step-by-step process is. And from there, um, one of my mentors, Chuck Sacco, which you may already know or you may not, but
Not yet.
not yet, but he's a big advocate of just learning from books, and he recommends a lot of great books. So with entrepreneurship, there's a set of books that are just fantastic, and these books actually give you a framework to start any kind of business. So as an example, there's one called the Lean Startup, which is going to tell you how to like spend no money but like build out your ideas. There's another one called the $100 Startup, which is building your own company in $100. And um, there's just so many of these examples that provide a framework for what to do. And I guess something that also helped me was throughout my journey, I listened to a lot of podcasts. Um, so I guess some examples include How I Built This by Guy Raz. It's on NPR. Absolutely fantastic. Literally any company you like, whether it's Spotify or Chipotle. Actually, not Chipotle. Um, I think it was Sweet Green or one of those newer ones, Hip City Veg. Um, Literally any company, it's there. And it's an interview with the founder of how they hustled to build kind of the first prototype uh, of their venture. And it's all kinds of different ventures, whether it's a Supergoop, which is a sunscreen company, to like a software company like Spotify. And so that really inspired me to do to do things to like make my own venture. And I guess last but not least, something I kind of learned was to just have a plan going in and just keep at it. Like making a business is not something that you can do in a week or a weekend or a month. It truly will take you many, many, many weeks to get your idea on paper. And don't be discouraged if you don't have a company in 1 month. It'll take you a long time, but trust me, it'll pay off.
Well, I love it. Just for the students, I put in the chat just some of what Adit was recommending for you guys. So check out those readings in the podcast he mentioned. There's some really good ones.
I'm actually also working on an article right now, which is, so since we're ramping down Vibe, something I'm working on is kind of a reflection, which is breaking down the whole process of building a company from nothing to eventually. So in the process, we got really interesting fundraising offers for one like a while ago that we got was almost for like $900,000. And um, from from an idea to that amount, building a team from 3 people to 15 people, all the mistakes we made and everything we've learned. I'm trying to put it down in an article. So I'll send that out to Roger and maybe he can share it with you guys.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to read that. I could use it as a case study in classes. I mean, yeah, I would love it.
Cool.
And it's amazing too. So kind of piggybacking off of that, right? You created this brand from scratch, essentially. Let's say brand because it's beyond the business. Like everybody knows Vibe. It's like they just see the 3 letters, they know the purple. Like it makes you feel good. And I feel like when people heard that it was closing, we just felt so sad because we almost felt like an emotional connection to the brand itself, even like outside of you guys, which is a testament to your branding ability. So, and maybe speak to that for a moment. How did you create such a brand that could connect with people so quickly?
So I guess branding is something that it needs to be very specific. When you're building a brand, you need to know who you're targeting your product or your service to. So for example, with Vibe, we wanted to make sure we were targeting young kind of millennials, people that are out and about having experiences at clubs and hotels and restaurants and you name it. So I guess that was our starting point. So another thing that kind of we took to our advantage was that we were young. So when we first started like 16 and 17, and we were like, hey, we're super young, but we're gonna work like 10 times harder than anyone else out there. And we actually did. We used to wake up at like 4. Like we tried to work for 4 hours every morning, but that was it. 4 hours every day, and that's all we'd work on. And in that time, we think about how can we show off like our personalities within our brand. So your brand is really kind of an opportunity for you to express who you are. So depending on kind of what values you want to bring to your company, what's the mission for the company, what's your vision, those things, if you think about it a little bit, your branding would give you an opportunity to like put that all out there. So that's, in a long answer, that's how we did it. We didn't have any, like we didn't study marketing. We didn't study a lot about branding. We didn't really know that, which in retrospect, if you guys are interested, read this book called Traction by Gabriel Weinberg. He's the founder of DuckDuckGo, almost a $2 billion company now. He's actually a Philadelphia guy. And that really helps you understand how to get traction on your brand. And so you have to think of it this way. If you're building a brand, there's so much noise in the world. Like when you go on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook, I can bet you saw 5 different brands the last time you went on there. And I can also bet that you have no idea what brands you saw. So there's so much noise that you have to get your brand to be a little bit provocative, but also stand out. So as an example, we on the back of our t-shirts, we wrote like, Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe, which is a Kendrick Lamar song, which is a very popular song, but it was kind of provocative. And that's how we got a lot of buzz for people to download our app. So I would just say, whatever you do, just think about it, be intentional, and don't be afraid to put yourself out there.
I love it. Something you said really struck a chord with me too. It's letting your authentic personality shine through the actual brand. And people don't do that well enough normally. It's like they get so stuck in corporate language and they don't want people to see who they really are. But I just feel like people are really, really drawn to authenticity nowadays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I guess a good example off that is there's this company called Mckinsey Company. It's a very, very prestigious management consulting company. They like exclusively recruit from like Harvard and Yale, and it's a very good management consulting company. They will charge you millions of dollars to write your mission and vision statements, which is like, we will empower others to do blah blah blah. But I think a lot of times what people do is when they think about their branding, the specific wording they choose with their company, they write jargon, which is like big words to make it sound like it's very fancy, but like that's counterproductive because your audience is not going to understand what that means. So think about it this way: make what you're doing so easy to understand and so simple that your audience just gets it right away. And that's what we concentrated on with Vibe.
Well, truer words spoken, right? Yeah, we just overcomplicate life, and anybody should be able to get it. Wow, I love it. So since it's our first day of camp, we kind of do like a basic overview of like what entrepreneurial thinking is and what it is not. And the students are really, really good at identifying based off my examples, like, who's an entrepreneur versus a business person and all that. But kind of weigh in on that if you could. So, if you ever come across on your journey people who, again, will make like stellar MBAs or, they'll make a good employee for somebody, but just people who you don't really think could be entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So when I was younger, like my sophomore year at Drexel, I used to think that an entrepreneur is someone who has to drop out of college and start something that's eventually valued at like $1 billion. And that's not true at all. I actually didn't even realize that my dad was an entrepreneur, even though he kind of started his own business. And like, you don't really think about that word with people that are that are kind of that have started their own kind of roles, that have started their own companies. And I think nowadays most people want to it's like entrepreneurship is like an outfit that you want to put on, but if that kind of makes sense, most people want to act like an entrepreneur, but not really do what it takes to be an entrepreneur. So I guess what I would define entrepreneurship is you can do it at your own company, like you can start your own company. You can do it in an existing company, which is like an entrepreneur. And I can give you an example of how I did that at one of my internships. And I think entrepreneurship is something that you have like I think it's problem solving at the best, and it's something that should create opportunities for you and like a lot of other people, like your audience. So you can do entrepreneurship at a company. So when I did an internship at this company called SAP, which is SAP is the third biggest software company in the world. It's a German company after Microsoft and some other software company. But one of the things I started there was they have a lot of Drexel alumni, but they don't have any kind of way or kind of a way to get them all together kind of for Drexel people. So I actually started an event there where we got one of the senior vice presidents of the whole company to come and speak, and the president of the company, Jennifer Morgan at the time. We got her to come and speak and address to kind of all of the Drexel alumni. And at the time, I remember there were like 70 people there, which is a lot from like one big company from like one university. So that entire event took like 2 months of planning, a ton of work for execution, and eventually the value it provided was it became an annual event, which hopefully they still do today. And that's a way you can be an entrepreneur in a company, starting your own division, solving a problem in a unique way that no one else is doing. And then outside of a company, whether you're interested in selling baseball cards or you're interested in making an app, or you really have a problem of finding a book and or an electronic and you want to fix it with your own kind of idea, you can do all of that like at your own business or your own kind of startup. Most people that start companies, like will post on Facebook and LinkedIn that like they're an entrepreneur and whatnot. But every time I speak to someone, I say like the best way to be an entrepreneur is just stay in stealth mode and get your like work in the shadow for a while until you can get your product or your idea out there, and then you can kind of market it. So that's one of the mistakes I learned from Vibe. We spent a year marketing it when we had no product, we had no app. We kind of just had an idea. And if we had to do it all over again, we'd not spend that much time, but figure out how to get our product in like a fraction of the time, and launch it quicker. So long way, like that's how you can be an entrepreneur. That's things to avoid when you're trying to become an entrepreneur. And at the end of the day, like, you don't have to be an entrepreneur. It's not for everyone. It's like saying, hey, do you want to be a physicist at NASA? Not everyone wants to do that. Not everyone likes physics. So it's okay if you don't want to be an entrepreneur. Yeah.
I love that. That's kind of what we were talking about earlier today too, just and what's required. And like the non-glamorous stuff, but like the bravery, you know, we went down a list, and it's not for everybody, and there's nothing wrong with that either. Even for people to just appreciate entrepreneurs is amazing, and we need people like that in high positions at companies too. So, you know, we need everybody. Everybody can't be the creators, but it takes a certain bravery, you know. It's not for the faint of heart. People who are like afraid to fail publicly and stuff, it's not for them, you know.
I'd say on that note, I think like I think regardless of if you be an entrepreneur or not, you should really enjoy failing. If your first venture doesn't work out, that's okay. If your second one doesn't work out, that's also okay. Just make sure you learn whatever you learn from that opportunity and continue to try a lot of different things. If you spend 3 years on something and it doesn't work out, let that be an opportunity for you to figure out what your next thing is going to be. As an example, have you guys heard of Instacart? It's a delivery. Instacart, super famous now. It's you just order groceries. The guy who founded Instacart started 20 different businesses before he actually made one and got funding for it, which was Instacart. And now Instacart is worth like $5 billion or something like that. So don't let failures be or deter you from continuing, because it's, I guess, the more you fail, the more you learn. And if you don't fail, then you won't be able to really appreciate when you have a big win.
Wow. Yes. No. Yeah, I just love it. I think, why do you think it is that people are so fearful of failing, or at least in your experience? Because all entrepreneurs are afraid to do it at first, but what is it?
That's a great question. I think pride. I think most people don't want to say that they failed, and I think it's because, like, who wants to be a failure? No one, right? But in fact, you're not failing if your intention is to get up every time you fail or do something wrong. So as an example, what's a good example? I can't think of a good example, but when you're trying a lot of different things, actually, here's a good tennis example. Every time I'm playing a set and I fail in the first set or I lose, right? You can either quit playing tennis, or you reflect on the mistakes you made or the unforced errors or the bad footwork or whatever you did in that first set, and try to fix that in the second set. So it's kind of like I would say like like entrepreneur, that's similar to entrepreneurship as well, because you might not win in the first set, but you have unlimited sets, so you can eventually win as long as you keep trying, and learning from each prior set to understand what your mistakes were.
And we don't learn that much from the wins. I feel it's like it feels good for a minute, but then you forget and move on because you already won. So you don't overanalyze and figure out, well, why did I win? But you do when you fail. Or you want to figure out, how do I avoid that thing again? So I just feel like more of the learning happens when you fail.
Totally.
Yeah, it's like human nature, right? It's like people don't go to the doctor when they feel good. It's like we go when we're sick and need help. And it's just how humans are. It's like we wait till things are not working in our favor to analyze and learn from them. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you need to, as an entrepreneur, I think you'll fail. Like even within, you can have a lot of small failures, um, which are opportunities missed or things you do wrong. You can have a lot of bigger failures, which is if a deal that you really, really wanted to get just blows up and it doesn't happen. Um, so in each kind of situation, you have to know if you stop right there, like that's it. But you don't know what the upside is of that opportunity you're pursuing until you kind of keep going. But I would still say like, um, don't do stuff blindly. So as an example, um, do stuff scientifically. So if you're trying to pursue an idea, make sure you don't just like jump into the idea and work on it. Make sure you understand the market that the idea is entering, and make sure you understand like how have the other people that have pursued the same idea, how have they done in the past. And if you if you go in with that market research and that prior knowledge, I think you'll be a lot more successful than um, if you had just gone in blindly. So that's something that with Vibe we actually just jumped in. We were interested in the concept, we were interested in the problem, and we jumped back in. So that's, I would say, a mistake. This time around in my next venture, we spent 3 weeks making a humongous spreadsheet of every single business that kind of dissimilar to what we're hoping to do, learning about whether the business is still existing, or they shut down, trying to learn about how much money they raised, trying to learn about what markets they're operated in, if it's in the Latin America market or if it's in Europe or Africa or America. So this time going in, we kind of knew what the whole market looked like, and that gave us an opportunity to differentiate our brand. And it also gave us an opportunity to differentiate our business model. However, with Vibe, we really didn't know any of that. We kind of learned over time. So that's another side point.
yeah, I think part of it is just age too, because all of us have this in common of being like younger entrepreneurs, and we don't want to wait and just be very, very quick, and we just jump in and hope for the best. But like I did the saying, like you can save a lot of time, money, and aggravation by just doing some more homework and talking to some people, and don't let your pride get in the way of you like finding a mentor or reading a book or going to school. Like do
Yeah.
the homework it takes.
I think with age, I always did stuff a little bit earlier. As an example, I was a freshman at Drexel when I was 16, and I graduated college at 20. I think when it comes to age, I heard that probably hundreds of times that you're too young to start a business. I heard it from like my own family members. And I think here's kind of like my analogy for it. I like 40 years ago, people did not think a 4-minute mile was possible. They were like, it's impossible. 4-minute mile, no one can run that. So as soon as someone broke the 4-minute mile, then you got someone that was like 3 minutes and 52 seconds, and then 3 minutes and 51 seconds, and 3 minutes and 49 seconds. And it just kept breaking that individual record. So similarly for age, if you think of it, you don't like, there's no requirement to be an entrepreneur. As an example, there's people that have sold businesses in their teenage years. And I think the only thing that's stopping you is your drive, your ambition, and your desire to learn more than your peers are learning. Because when you're an entrepreneur, you're going to have to learn random things quicker. You're going to have to learn how contracts work because you have to work on a deal that's going to get you like $30,000. Or you're going to have to learn how marketing works because you have to sell your whatever you're selling. You have to learn how sales works. And the cool thing about it is you can learn all of it for free from Google and YouTube. I'm not even kidding. Literally just search up the question and you'll get the answer. And a lot of people don't realize that. They think that you have to have a Harvard MBA to make a successful company. But I think if you know how to utilize Google, then you can be whatever you want to be.
You're preaching. I love it. I'm like taking good notes here. That's true. I love it. And I just have a few questions around like the personal side of the thing. So I feel like we always encourage our entrepreneurs, like, and I hate this, but people are always like, oh, work, 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 like sleep when you die kind of thing. And I personally disagree. It's like you have to have work-life balance, especially as a young person now, contending with a pandemic and racial rioting and so many things that you guys are facing as young people. You can't afford not to have a work-life balance and to, you know, continue on in the long haul. So just kind of speak to that. You know, if you had any challenges around it, or is there any advice you have for maintaining it?
Mm-hmm. That's tough. So I guess without without disrespecting the like philosophy of work-life balance, you also have to realize that you're not gonna like succeed compared to your peers who are working a 40-hour work week if you don't work more than them. So people are so caught up with like, I have to work 40 hours a week and then I'm done, that you're saying no to a lot of opportunities that might take a lot more time. So starting a company, there might be some weeks where you have to work 100 hours a week and you get up at 5 and then like, I'm not even kidding. When things are very good in the company and you have a lot of work, you'll get up really early and you won't even need coffee. It's like you're going to wake up and you'll know that you have so much to do that you can't waste a second. And it may seem weird, but it's a really good feeling. Like imagine whatever stuff you guys are interested in, whether it's like electronics or just branding or making your own company on that topic, that you're so busy that you're working on that stuff you love all day long. And that's a good kind of introduction to, you should never be working on a company because you want to be really rich. Being rich is great, but if you're not solving a problem for anyone, then what's the point? So if you're working on an idea that you're really passionate about and it excites you, and you yourself would be a user of that solution. Like for example, with Vibe, if I had a solution for knowing how all the social scenes were, then I wouldn't have to text my friends and be like, hey, how's this bar tonight? Or how's this restaurant? Is it crowded? I would just know, and I'd save time and I'd probably save money. So if you're a user of your own idea, then that's more motivation to make sure your idea is made well. But I guess like reality check, you're not going to be an entrepreneur if you like limit yourself to working 40 hours a week. You're going to have to work a lot more. But it's also not that much. If you wake up and you work, take a break and work late at night, you're probably going to work more than 40 hours a week if you work on weekends as well. So don't let that restrict you. Don't time yourself. But also it is important to take care of physical and mental health. Like getting counseling, it's cool. You don't let that, like, it's not a weird thing. Making sure you work out, that's also cool, because I think my philosophy is if your mind is healthy and your body is healthy, your startup is going to be that much more successful. So I think really make sure you do that, like at whatever point of your life you guys are in, whether it's like in high school or college or grad school or even full-time job. Don't shy away from care. It will make your startup a lot better.
Well, I love that. You just say something that stuck with me too. Is if people can't be afraid of the hard work, I feel like they also want to do the 4-hour work week as they're like 18 or 19 years old. And like you said, this it's just not reality. You know, that could work for people that already have like everything figured out, maybe, but it takes time and years to get to that level. But you gotta be open to it. You gotta work hard. Like Adit said, you have to outwork the competition too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. It'll take you a lot of time, but um, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
You have one life to work on cool projects and like literally cool stuff. Why would you want to waste it working on boring stuff and like stuff that you really don't care about? So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that true? Yeah, it's like, yeah, anybody can get, like you said, a 40-hour job and have benefits and all that, but at a point you might just get bored because your mind is racing with all these other ideas, and then you giving all your energy and time into that business that's not yours. So, you know, one day you'll wake up and be like, oh my God, like, did I give away the best years of my life to somebody else's dream?
Yeah. I would say it's also in retrospect, like your goal also shouldn't be to make sure you don't get a job after school because
Mm.
or after undergrad or college. I think what I've realized is if you're not working on a startup idea in college, like you utilize college as a very safe space to work on your startup ideas. As an example, when I worked just on school, I did okay. But when I worked on my startup and school was kind of secondary to me, I actually ended up doing better at school for some reason because I was just better at managing my time. Um, I I had like 1 hour a day where I'd spend on school, and the rest I just work on my startup. But in that 1 hour, I would be so focused on my schoolwork, and so I think um, like additionally going on that topic, if you're working a lot and by the end of your kind of education you don't have any kind of company, you don't have to feel bad. You can find a job, but your goal should still be to work before full-time work or work after on your ideas. So like as long as you're passionate about working on your own ideas, you can do it anytime. You can do it in high school, you can do it in college, you can do it while working at a full-time job. But I guess you're the first factor. It starts with you.
How did you balance all that? Because, well, this is a two-pronged question. So, A, what even made you want to continue your education at the doctor level? And B, how do you manage that, you know, with your entrepreneurial ventures?
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, so super candidly, I wanted to keep working on startups. And when I was graduating, I had a great job at Amazon, very safe, great pay. Um, However, I was just thinking, is this job still going to be there in a couple of years? And yeah, that job's still going to be there. However, I didn't want to take the risk of just working on my startup full time and not doing anything else because my personality is I'm quite risk averse. I want to make sure I have multiple doors open at the same time. And so I had realized that graduate school would be an opportunity, and it's something that I wanted to do, and I had good enough relations with the computer science department in Drexel to say, hey, guys, I have a job offer from Amazon, but I really want to go back to school, and so I'm going to apply. I'm going to take the GRE exam, which is which is like the SAT equivalent of graduate school, and um, I still remember it was like the last day that I had to accept the job offer. Like I had to accept it by 5 p.m. And I got the email from Drexel, like my acceptance letter, at like 4:41 p.m. It was so nerve-wracking. Um, and so, um, yeah, graduate school and a PhD for me was just a way to stay in a safe environment and work on my ideas, but also kind of like long-term, my career-wise, I did want to get an advanced degree because I do think it helps in some case getting a higher pay or like more credibility. When you're fundraising for a startup, in my opinion, you'll get more credibility because of academia. It's kind of weird, but like currently that's how it works. Maybe 30 years from now, people don't care about college, or maybe they care about it more. Who knows? But right now, how the world works is the more degrees you have, people really like that. So I just thought that'd be a good way to continue working on school and continue working on my startup ideas.
I love it. And just for the students, to tell them what you're studying and researching.
Yeah. So my how a PhD works is it's like 4 or 5 years. It's quite long, but the first 2 years are classes. So it's you get your master's from all the classes that you're doing at a PhD level. And my particular focus area is in computer science, and it's computer vision, which is essentially like you have these video streams and you have to understand what you can do with them. So within computer science, within computer vision, one of the areas that I'm really interested in is I think in 10 years we're not going to use phones anymore. I think that we're going to use audio-enabled devices like Apple glasses or Google glasses or stuff like that. And I think like video feeds are going to be the new like thing that everyone needs. So I thought that'd be a good opportunity to learn computer vision, and specifically my research focus is human interaction recognition, which is like two people are talking, like understanding from their facial expressions and body language. Are they having a friendly conversation? Are they fighting? And stuff like that, which is something that can be applied in a lot of places. Like it could be in security cameras to detect crime using machine learning in the future so that they can dispatch police automatically. It could be in cars. So that's something that I thought could be quite like broad, and that's my research topic currently.
I love it. You think that you'll ever, I ask you all the time, but for them, you think that you'll be teaching one day too, or?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I think it's personally, it's not something that's like one of my big passions. I love teaching tennis because I love playing tennis, and I could play like 15 hours a day. But when it comes to like teaching, like in academia or at a school, I think you have to have like a lot more patience than I have, and so I don't know, maybe that could change. But a PhD does give you the opportunity to teach at a university if you want to. And so if later down the line I realize that's something I want to do, then hopefully it'll keep that door open for me.
You're doing it now, so I love it. So I would love to open up this time for students to get to ask some questions.
Um,
Oh, sorry. We have somebody now. I was about to say, yeah, introduce yourselves as you talk to Adit.
my name's Zach, and I was just wondering what exactly is the process to like get an app on the App Store? Like, what exactly do you have to go through? Who do you have to contact? And what needs to get like approved?
Mm-hmm.
Is basically what I'm asking.
That's a great question. I actually had that same question about a year ago when we were putting our app on the App Store, and I Googled it. And it sounds shitty, but Google has everything. So the first link I clicked on, and I found out it depends. So if you want to get your app on the iOS store, the process is different than if you want to get your app on an Android store. So for iOS, you have to get like a development license. You have to pay like $100 for that, and then you have to have a Mac. So that's one of the requirements for an iOS application. You have to make sure your app is tested using the software called Xcode. So when I was searching that same question, I literally Googled it, and that was one of the reasons I actually had to buy a Mac, because we had to get the app on the App Store. So Android is a little bit easier. You have to pay like $25 to get the Android license, and then you have to have their own software, and then you have to like go to their website and drag and drop the software that you made onto there, and then you can submit it that way. But there's like a million tutorials on YouTube. I probably followed one of them when I was putting my app on the App Store, and it was super helpful.
I have a question. My name is Anthony, and also I'm wondering about, considering you work in, technological development, coding, things like that. One, have you ever heard of Skynet AI? And second, how close do you feel we are before we actually kind of overdo it on artificial intelligence and facial recognition? Because it's a thing that's like very underlooked relative to, an online world. And I feel like that's like beyond, there's of the bigger things that really needs to be attacked. That is a massive, massive problem, because like everyone's information has already been fished. So it's more just, what do you do as a way to protect yourself? And two, like, what are your just relative thoughts on, any type of facial recognition, artificial intelligence software?
Yeah. A lot of good questions. So I'll answer them one by one. Skynet AI, I think that's the one from Terminator, but it may also be, yeah. So I don't quite know how that operated. I think what I would say is facial recognition today and just AI today is super advanced because of one factor, which is much better computers, much more performing computers. And so if you have like algorithms and technology software and stuff like that ran on really slow computers, as an example, like if you have an iPhone, like if you have an iPhone 6 or beyond, that the tech that's in an iPhone 6 is more powerful than the Discovery space shuttle that went to outer space. So that's insane. And so if you have like a little phone that's so powerful, imagine using like a Mac, which is a lot more powerful than your iPhone. And so that really helps make these software systems faster. And I guess in terms of like facial recognition and whatnot, again, if you have an iPhone, you guys know how quickly it can unlock your iPhone just looking at your face with biometric scanning. So it's ubiquitous, it's everywhere. I know places where facial recognition is used on the CCTV cameras. So if you're in an Apple store, or if you're in, specifically New York City, there's a program that actually detects your face, like when you're walking down the street. So a lot of people don't know this, but it's a way to mitigate terrorism, and it's ubiquitous. It's used for safety, and I guess
the overall is that, and I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it's like the overall statement is that it's for safety, and we have countless times where like the idea of technology saves and stops from terrorism is the exact same thing as the when you go get checked down and patted down by the people at the TSA. The idea is that it stops things, and like we have very, and the Skynet AI is like not from the Terminator. It's now the 2020 thing. There's a company developed under the exact same name. And so I'm saying, as someone who is a developer, do you believe that there's a point at which it's going to not even overtake, but it's just reaching its breaking point of actual safety and becoming, a listing of just information of everything for anyone's disposal, whether it's positive or negative?
It's a good question. I would have no idea. Like, very honestly, I think it's I guess like theoretically how I could answer that, there's this thing called Moore's Law, which is every year the technology and how powerful it is like exponentially better than the year before that. So as your tech gets better, you're obviously going to have like better, faster software. So unfortunately, I'm not as well like knowledgeable in that area.
I have a question. So when you, at the very beginning, you talked about how you love to do a million different things. And at what point do you think you're spreading yourself too thin, or do you think you're ever going to do that?
Mm-hmm. That's actually a great question. I think that's a fantastic question. So I guess how I can answer that is there were points in my undergrad and even now where I've spread myself super duper thin, like incredibly thin, and it's not good. Like you get stressed out, you overwork. And I think at that point it's important to cut out stuff from your life that like doesn't help you achieve whatever your mid to long-term goals are. So I can actually show you this. I have this like sheet, I have this post-it, which is like all of my commitments, like working on my startup, working on my internship, my PhD. But on the right side, it only says two things. It has like only two things. Like everything that I'm doing helps two things. It helps me getting a PhD and it helps me raising a successful Series A round, which in a startup, a Series A is like when you raise one or two or a few $1 million to like grow your company at a much faster pace. And so I guess long story short, if you think you're spreading yourself out, you should ask whatever task you're doing, is that like, A, is it like fulfilling to you? B, does it help you in any way? Are you learning from it? Are you growing in that opportunity? And just have criteria for yourself. And if it's not in any of those criteria and you think you're just doing it, just I don't know why, then you can cut it out. As an example, I used to do a lot of like even, for example, even tennis. I used to teach a lot of tennis, and my junior year of college, when I was getting really busy with working on my company and also my summer internships and a lot of other stuff, I realized that while teaching 10 hours of tennis a weekend would be great, like financially over that weekend, but the payoff wouldn't be as good like 10 years out. And so I wanted to work on things that would like not only help me develop more, but also that were more aligned kind of like with my longer term goals. So yeah, I would say just have a reality check with yourself every few weeks. And actually I'm just starting to do this. I'm just starting to measure everything that I do like quite meticulously, like my finances, like my short-term and long-term goals. I read this really good quote recently. It's like, if you don't measure something, that means it's not managed. So if you're not measuring your goals, or if you're not measuring your finances, even if it's for your company or like whatever cool stuff you're doing, then it's not managed properly. So that's a good like reality check for you. And I think like have a lot of great mentors like Roger and people in your life that like you want to aspire to be. So I'm lucky to have a lot of fantastic mentors that I can just chat and say, hey, in 10 years, I want to do this. How do I, I have no idea what to do. How do I do it? And they'll give me a lot of examples. Oh, well, a couple years ago, I did this, this, and this. Maybe you could try this. So like, hopefully that helps.
I love it. Any more questions for Adit? There's got to be a few more. He's such a wealth of knowledge.
How did you motivate yourself to, like you said, like for 2 weeks you woke up at 4 a.m. then worked for 4 hours straight. Like, how did you motivate yourself even when you thought your startup, I don't know if this happened to you, but if you thought that it wasn't going to go well, or just how did you keep on going, like after every day, even after everything that happened?
That's a great question. Um, for the 4 a.m., I honestly have no idea why we did that. I just thought it was cool. I guess for motivating yourself through like hard times, one thing that always keeps me going is, for example, when you're playing a sport, right? Like for example, tennis again. When you're playing tennis, you are only like playing against one person or two people at most. So like you're competing against two people. When you're playing soccer, you're competing against like 10 people, like the whole other team. Um, when you're in school, it's really not a competition, but like you're competing against like a whole bunch of people to do very well. When you're applying to really good college, you're competing against like all these thousands of people that are also applying there. And so similarly, when you're working when you're working on a company, you're competing against the whole world. There's going to be someone sitting in China or in a different part of America or in a part of Europe that's hungrier than you are and wants it badder than you want it. And they're going to work their butt off to beat you up. And that's something I actually heard from someone, one of this for Vibe, we applied to Shark Tank, and we actually got to the third round of interviews for Shark Tank. And one of the guys there was like, there were thousands of companies, and this guy was giving a talk, like kind of before the 1 minute pitch. Unfortunately, we didn't make it anywhere past that. But for the 1 minute pitch, he was like, as hard as you work, there's going to be somewhere across the world that's going to work harder than you, and they're going to kick your butt. And since I heard that, it like gives me anxiety every time I think about it, and I just want to work harder than everyone else. So I guess that's a motivation. Probably not the best one, but your motivation is whatever helps you. So if you're motivated by impact, you would know that because of the work that you're doing, like causes a lot of positive impact, and you can measure that. That's one motivation. So if you're motivated by money, and it's okay to be, as you work harder and you become more successful, you can see the higher revenues that are coming in from your company, and that could be another motivation. So really whatever works for you. For me personally, it's I'm very competitive, and so just the fact that I know someone's going to work harder than me kind of is scary. And I know that when you're working on a startup, you're not competing with like 10, 15 people. You're working against a lot of people. Like there's people all over the world that have the same idea as you potentially. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. You don't know. And maybe they're working just a little bit more than you are, and they're going to get to market faster. And you can prevent that by just working a little bit more. Hopefully I didn't give anyone anxiety talking about that.
I was like typing down notes like work harder, but it's true. Like I was telling them like there's nothing wrong with making money, because the more money you have, the more you can invest in yourself and in the communities and causes you care about. There's nothing with being competitive. I just think we demonize entrepreneurs sometimes, especially the young ones. We say, oh, that's cutthroat, or it's too much or too intense. But there's nothing with it. I think you have to work hard, and you have to want to see yourself at the top. So I don't see anything wrong. Some people do though. They're like, oh, it's not. I did tell the students is I think like our biggest competition should be ourselves at the end of the day. But still, like you said, you are still technically in competition with other people. And, you gotta keep that in mind. Yeah. What's any regrets so far in your journey?
No, not really. I think that's something I'm quite thankful for. Like even if you fail at different stuff, you should fail in, like however you do, you should give it your all. And even if you have to take tough decisions, sometimes you have to know like the reasons why you're doing it. And so if you're okay with that, I think that then you don't think it's regretful. I think there's a lot of inspiring stories that are cool, such as the guy who invented KFC. He was probably in the 60s or 70s, and he was super depressed. He did not have anything. He lost his job, and he'd spent all of his savings and started this random company, KFC, and it out of nowhere, it's like super popular, right? So, but he just kept working hard, and I think that is what's inspiring with entrepreneurship. Again, if your first company doesn't work out, and there's a high probability it won't, not to discourage you, but because of everything you'll learn in the first company you make, you'll be able to make the second company like 50% faster or 50% better. And then the third company you'll be able to make it in like a third the time and get that much progress a lot faster. So just knowing that it's not much in regret.
That's a good thing.
Always.
And I feel like that too. You always tell the students, they always keep potential regrets in mind, and then you normally don't have them. Like if you think about that before you do something, like, well, I regret this later, and then if you think that way, you probably won't regret anything. But.
Yeah, I would say you should always take a chance on yourself. If like whatever it is, if it's for a sport, if it's for a company, if it's for whatever you're passionate about and whatever you're interested in, if you don't take a chance on yourself, then no one else will.
I love that. Yeah, so students, this might be a good time for you to kind of pick out this brain, about what you're thinking of. I know you haven't finished your ideation exercise yet, but I'm already thinking like the Gupta. You guys already have a lot of stuff going on. I mean, they have like a nonprofit. They can tell you all about themselves with the triplets, and they have a organization. So give your elevator pitch and get some feedback.
Yeah, I'd be happy to help.
Yeah. And you're a Gupta too. I just realized. I'm like, wait.
So I don't, basically, my sister and brother are also on the call. Their names are Karina and Armand, and we're triplets. And 2 years ago, we created a nonprofit organization called Little Mentors, and we co-founded it together. And originally it was just based off of like this idea that our dad told us, that when he lived in India when he was younger, and he said that if he had the opportunity to talk to kids from the US, it would have been amazing for him. So based on that idea, we tried to grow it into something larger than that. And then we started contacting schools internationally and locally. And then we do Zoom calls with them and try to create friendships with them to get to know them better. And it's basically based off mutualism. And then we've visited a Costa Rica orphanage and donated supplies to them. We've donated thousands of books to organizations that like Variety and Book Smiles. We've held our own events to try to get people from our community involved. I think Armand can talk a little more about what our organization is and what we do.
So adding on to what my sister said, we co-founded this organization together. And the basis is that kids can help other kids more than adults can. And like my sister said, we wanted to grow this idea onto a bigger level. And we wanted to integrate it within our community and help kids locally and internationally through indirect and direct relationships. So we were able to contact them. And I think what is so special about organization is that we have these unique friendships with children they might be isolated, that might not have the same opportunities that we do, who live in a nice house in a suburban community. And I think the best thing that we get to see when we execute our endeavors are the smiles that we see on the kids' faces. Like one specific kid was Emily, and we met this girl at the Ronald McDonald House, and we were able to meet her and see how her life was at this place and how our lives are tremendously different, but we were able to learn from them, and we had this mutual relationship that we built upon. And the best thing was that we both had our smiles on our faces, and we're able to contact all these people and learn about them. Like we just, like last 2 days ago, we just met some kids in India. We had a Zoom call, and we were able to take advantage of these modern interfaces in order to meet like 10 to 20 kids in India. And we were able to talk about the escalating conflicts in India as well as the riots, and we were able to connect on so many different things. So hopefully we can continue our work into high school and learn more about ourselves and others.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot at a very young age, and I think that's really cool. So how do you, what specific questions or what advice, or I guess what's the next thing in the journey of your business that you're hoping to achieve that you're curious to ask about?
I think right now is I think the most important thing about a nonprofit is just to execute your work and your mission statement. That's the only role of an organization. But we want to expand our organization in order to achieve this. So we're thinking about, while we go into high school next year, 9th grade, we're hopefully thinking of making new chapters and like reaching new people. And I guess it's all along the lines of marketing, which my sister is in charge of, and public affairs. So how do you think that we can continue to do this? And how do you think that an organization should just be completely dedicated to just achieving its mission statement while growing, while like jointly growing?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question. I think your mission is, if you set that out early in your business, it's going to guide you to, like, in great times and in tough times. And when you're lost, it's like, why the heck are you doing what you're doing? It's because of your mission. So is your company registered as a 503c B or something like that?
Yeah, it's registered as a 501c3. Yeah.
Okay. When, like, in terms of how you measure impact, do you have specific metrics that you use for measuring impact from your business?
You can look at it as the number of students that we're able to reach out to, or the number of schools, because we're in contact with schools in India, Costa Rica, Brazil. So that could be a specific metric to like calculate our growth and the number of chapters, maybe.
Okay, got it. That's great. I think as you grow and as your company, and one of the mottos I like to follow is like fake it until you become it. So if your goal is to be expanded a lot more in terms of impact, revenues, and so forth, besides having great mentors, I would say, like, look at people that are not like incredibly old and experienced. Like, look for people that are right out of college and are hugely successful, that are in the same areas you are. I can think of Evan from Sharing Access. Roger, if you know that. So Evan from Sharing Access at Drexel is working on a similar nonprofit where he shares, he helps share food that would usually go to waste. And he's been featured in a lot of amazing places like Bloomberg. Some of the Pennsylvania senators gave him a shout out on Twitter, which is really cool. So I guess as you're growing, one of the things that helped me, and I think has probably helped Evan as well, is to have rigid milestones for your business in a certain time range. So when we're working with a for-profit business, or probably even nonprofit, you have these like 5-year summaries of like where you want to be year after year. So, I mean, 5 years from now, who knows what's going to happen, but think about what you can do in the next 6 years, or sorry, not 6 years, 6 months, 6 months to 12 months to 18 months. And when you have those specific goals, I think you can really hit those on the head and do that strategically, but always keep your mission and your impact metrics on those goals. As an example, for my new company, Lula, which is kind of an Amazon Prime model, but one of the metrics we're measuring is the amount of carbon emission we save. So each delivery, we save carbon emission because we're delivering from like bikes and electric scooters and electric cars. So it's actually carbon neutral. So how we can measure impact is if we deliver it in a normal way, that amount of carbon emission is how much we saved. So we can show that on our kind of like our bottom line. So keep that into account, like your exact metric. Have a lot of great mentors that are in your same area. Don't really look for mentors that are like decades beyond you. Look for mentors that are like just a few years, just where you want to be in like a couple of years. Not you as like individuals, but like your business. For your business, if you want to be national or even international, look for people that have done something similar, and are also kind of in their journey. They should not have like hit a home run yet, but they're in the process too, and you really believe in them and have them as your mentors. And I guess something, I'm also not very well versed with nonprofits, so I won't have like a lot of great specific advice. But something else you can do is what's one area that you're really struggling with the business?
So I think my sister and I, and my two sisters actually, I think in the past week, actually we've been, I think our organization, or at least our board of directors, has lost sight of our mission statement, which is to obviously empower other children and use our mediums and what we have to help other children, or at least empower them. And I think our board of directors have lost sight of that. And I think we're trying to make sure that we continue to do this. And I think if we have these daily goals or the weekly goals, then we'll be much ahead of ourselves, and we can fight this problem in our organization. So
yeah, I think that's very well put. I might have this on my screen from the good old days when I was working on Vibe. We had weekly goals, we had quarterly goals, we had annual goals, and that was something that really, really kept us grounded, and it really helped us be organized like month after month. So let me see if I can pull it up. Actually, it looks like I might not have it on. Yeah, unfortunately, I might not have it on me right now, but I can describe what we did. Within our organization, what we did was in an Excel sheet, in a very organized way, we broke down what we thought was most important. So for us at the time, it was like the technological development, like all the features our app had, whether it is like it has all the features that Instagram does or more. We broke down all of the revenue that we were bringing in. So one of our first customers was this coffee place called Saxby's. We broke down all of the marketing metrics. So how many likes do we have? How many engagement pieces do we have? And all of those combined helped us understand how far we were as a business. Because let's say what we did at the beginning of the year. So in December, right as the year was going to begin, we wrote down in technology, by the end of the year, we want to have these big features launched, like out to the public. For marketing, we currently have 21,000 followers. We have to get to 45,000 followers by the end of the year. Like, these are some big goals. For revenue, we have 1 paying client. We need 3 more by the end of the year. So you have those like big things that you want to accomplish by the end of the year. Then what you do is take it quarter by quarter. So if your company is losing sight of like what's really important and what your mission is, make sure your annual goals are really aligned with what your mission is and where you want to be headed. And then for your quarterly goals, just break it down to where you think you can be like in that particular quarter. As an example, let me share my screen. Let me know when you guys can see it. So here's an example of when we were first working on our technology, we broke down everything into 3 milestones, and we even had the cost for each milestone, including everything that it would cost. So we had these 3 milestones milestone 1, 2, and 3. And every single day, we would, every morning at 8 a.m. sharp, have a 5-minute phone call with all the team members. Every single day, we would never skip this. And we'd look at our milestone, and we'd look at all of the items that we had to do, all the items that we're currently doing, all of the things that are done. And we know that before starting the milestone that we have 1 month to do this, and we'd keep it very organized. So that's something that helped us quite a bit. That's for a specific project. And something that helped us a little bit more, we're doing this currently with our current venture, to do, doing, and done. And this is a free website called Trello. And I think all of you guys should get it if you're working on homework or anything you're working on. This really helps you organize what you're doing, what you still need to do, what you've already done. And let's say you want to filter this based on what do I have to do specifically for business development? Create the 5-year projections, this and this. As long as all of your items are incredibly detailed and organized in a short-term period, but also a long-term period, and you actually follow through, you're going to be exponentially more productive than if you kept everything in your mind and kind of just did the same in an unorganized way. So for me specifically, organization was key. Especially in entrepreneurship, you're dealing with like a billion things at the same time. And if you're not organized, you're gonna really regret it. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that definitely helped. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good luck.
Anybody else want to share their ventures, things they're thinking of, or things they already run? We probably have time for 1 or 2 more, depending. And they haven't done their ideation exercise yet. That's kind of their homework. So
I do have a question about something because even though what you're working in is more of a digital world trying to affect the physical world, what would you say is the best way to understand how to collect your materials and keep what you have and still, build off of that? Like, so in the sense of if you wanted to build a park, like that's what I'm thinking of. Like, what is the best way to attack the public domain to get something physically built?
So it's a good question. I'm not completely sure if I understand that. So you want to,
like if you were to build a business, like if you were to say, I need to, you need facilities is basically what I'm talking about. So for you, you might just use your own house and computer.
Mhm.
So, but I'm saying for any other form of, whether it's just a business in general, what would you say is like the best kind of way to keep track of your, materials and also ways to, find sources? So if you needed to, literally, if you were trying to build a park, you'd have to go through the city, but you'd also still need worker, all those types of things. Where would you want to like just start if you were trying to build something, not
right,
like a development?
Got it. So I guess I could generalize that a little bit to say, if you want to build something physical and you're not quite sure how to get there, how do you break that down into a lot of smaller things? Okay, so that's a good question. I don't know how to build a park, so I'm not going to answer that. However, when you're solving a big problem, it might seem daunting because there's like, how do you do it? Like imagine if Elon Musk initially was like, how do I build a rocket? I have no freaking idea. But over time he had to learn it. So specifically for that particular analogy, Elon Musk tried to buy his rocket from one of the bases in Russia, and he tried to like reverse engineer it. However, when you're building something physical, let's say if it's like a product, if it's like a piece of jewelry, or if it's like, if you're trying to 3D print something, or something a little bit bigger, like an electronic something, if I was doing that, what I would do is I'd first find a few products or similar things that already exist and learn how they're built. Because there's no use to recreate a tire or a wheel if there's already a tutorial on how to build that. So I'd first see how that's built, and then I'd learn like all the intricacies of building that. And I'd use those, like, it's like all those all those pieces are like blocks, and you can change those blocks to build whatever you're building. So I would say it's most important to have examples. So similarly, when we were building an app, we would look up how like Instagram's feed works, and like Instagram feed tutorial. We'd look up how sign up screen works and look up tutorials. Similarly, I guess if you're building something a little bit more physical, you would break down the problem into smaller problems, and you'd find tutorials that are like covering those smaller problems. And I can guarantee, like right now we're building a website on Wix, and we've never used Wix before. So our initial approach was watch as many tutorials on YouTube as possible to solve little problems. And within 2 weeks, we actually have a website that's ready. And a lot of the things we learned were from those YouTube videos. So again, that reinforced my liking for like Google and YouTube. It's super helpful.
Love that. Well, for the sake of time, we could talk to you forever, but can everybody join me in giving Adit a round of applause?
Dude, thanks for
Awesome.
having me. I actually have a question for everyone. So I'm doing a bit of market research on my next product, and I'm going to give you guys two options, and I'm just curious whether you guys like option A or option B.